Jennifer Grant has been appointed to the position of Director, Office of Anti-Racism, Equity, and Human Rights Services at George Brown College, with 14 years of experience teaching in the college's School of Social and Community Services program, and with previous managerial experience at Central Toronto Youth Services. Jennifer brings to the role a range of experience in child and youth services, youth justice, mental health, and advocacy. She has also helped a range of organizations adopt anti-racist and anti-oppressive practices and policies. Jennifer completed her master's at the University of Toronto. BIPOC Executive Search invites you to join us in congratulating Jennifer and thanks you for tuning into this edition of 5 Questions. So good to see you, Jennifer. Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of 5 Questions.
Hi, Jason. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, and congrats. Congrats on your role as Director, Office of Anti-Racism, Equity, and Human Rights Services. Such an important role at George Brown College. And I want to
Thank
launch in with the
you.
first question on that particular topic. Certainly a role like this is so important in all of our post-secondary campuses. And there can be a number of factors that draw someone to a role like this. But in your case, are there one or two reasons that you can highlight?
That's such a good question, Jason. Thank you for that because I think someone who moves from faculty at administration is often asked that question. I was faculty at George Brown for a while and moved into administration. The question is, okay, what drew you to that role? So I'm happy that you asked that because I think the same reasons that brought me into George Brown in the first place, this idea of kind of promise and potential, is kind of where what I saw in the role. And so this idea of really supporting the college in supporting the students and faculty and employee to be able to reach the promise and potential that they all want to reach. When I was in the field, I often would, think about promise and potential and, my role in supporting young people, particularly because I worked with young people in moving them towards their goals. And one of the things that I noticed really early on in the field was that it was about often the environments, the context where these young people were. And so it's not simply the kind of maximization of their own personal promise and potential, but creating spaces so that they can actualize that. And so this role to me is contributing to that space. It really is about creating this environment of belonging and well-being and a culture where folks feel like they can bring their full self and be validated. And that drew me to the role and really is still what is exciting and I think will remain exciting in this role.
Yeah, no, it is very exciting. And I love hearing you talk about, it using words such as space, right? Using words such as belonging. I know that in your announcement that was put out by the college, you were quoted as saying, community means everything to me. I see it as foundational to this work. And I completely agree. Can you share more with listeners about how community is connected to work in this space?
Right. So as I mentioned just in the last one, I come from community spaces. I come from working in community. My background is child and youth work. My background is working in community organizations, really working with young people. And personally, I grew up with a mother who I consider my first example of a community organizer, my first example of someone who was really grounded in community, that everything she did was around community. So I come by it honestly, right? And I'm biased towards looking for communities. So when it comes to a space like a post-secondary education, I think it's often, surprising perhaps to move into administration and think about community as the grounding of the work that we're doing. But when you think about the Office of Anti-Racism, Equity, and Human Rights Services, that is person, people, human work, right? And human work is often situated in community, right? In social interactions and relationships and building that connection with others in order to push these important ideals forward. So community, I don't know how to do the work. I tell people all the time, I don't know how to do this work without thinking about who we're serving, without joining with who we're serving, without listening to those who are most affected by the choices that we make. And so that's just my orientation, but then in an environment like George Brown that I think will allow for that, it allows me to maximize that orientation and say, okay, now we have the opportunity to really build that out in a school that is situated within a community. It's the community school, right?
Within the community.
It is
Yeah.
situated in community. It's situated in the middle of downtown in this diverse environment. And so why not start from that principle of building on community and pushing us forward to reach our ideals around human rights, around equity, around anti-racism through the collaboration, the connection, and the relationships we build with our community.
Yeah, so powerful. I mean, so many of the answers are there waiting for you in community, right?
Absolutely,
Oftentimes when
absolutely.
people are wondering how to do this work, it's like engage communities and listen to what they are saying they
Absolutely.
need. And, it's just so great to also hear you talk about the context of George Brown College, situated in a very pluralistic community that is downtown Toronto. So it's wonderful. Can you think of a quote or a saying that truly resonates with you, and also share why? Why does it resonate with you?
Oh man. So what you don't know about me is that I love to collect quotes. I'm one of those people who like collect little sayings, right?
Okay, so
Like
you
I
like this
love,
question
yeah,
then.
I love this question, right? Because it allows me to kind of, which quote should I take? But the one that I think I most often say to myself, and probably my daughter, but certainly say
Yeah.
to myself, is to whom much is given, much is required. Um, that is a quote that has always um, centered me, right? It allows me to remind myself of not only the privilege that I've had, be grateful of what I've been given, but the responsibility and the accountability to give that back, right? And I think if we were all to kind of think about what we have, because we all have something special, and see it as our duty to share that, I think things would, well, I just think the world would be different. And so, starting with me, I think, how do I recognize, be grateful, honor the things that I've been given, the opportunities that I've been given. I'm sitting here because of the graciousness of many, but also because I've been given certain gifts, but more importantly, I've been given certain um, uh, you know um, I've been given certain privileges and opportunities
Mhm.
that not everybody will get. And so what do you do with that when that happens? And I think that's the question that's being asked throughout and within society right now is, for those of us who've been given some much more, what do we do with that? What is our responsibility with that? And so to whom much is given, much is required is probably the quote that I think of often.
That is a really powerful quote. And you're so right. I mean, what legacy do we all want to leave? Like,
Yeah.
how do we want to be remembered? And so, right now, like you said, is a time that many people are reflecting on that very topic.
Mhm.
Anytime I go through recruitment process, with a leader, I find that they often learn something about themselves coming out of it. And
Mhm.
assuming that this is the case for you as well, is there something that you learned about yourself going through the hiring process that you're willing to share?
I think you and I spoke about this a little bit, right? When we were doing the hiring, working through this hiring process, is representation.
Mm,
So I didn't realize how much that mattered until I was sitting in a space that I was brought into after our first conversation, and how the conversation that we started with, your introduction to me to the role, and then moving into the panel and a diverse panel, and knowing that there were folks who looked like me in the space, right? And that changes how one enters that space. It changes the energy. And so having you there at the first, actually meeting you, and then having you in the first interview was really powerful in changing how I showed up, right? And for someone who has, I've been in a lot of interviews and certainly have had opportunities to kind of share my story or my skills in different environments regarding employment.
mhm,
Having that space and that time where I could walk in and see that, oh, I'm being greeted by the person who introduced me to the role, and then again seeing them there was just a weight lifted. It's
Yeah.
so powerful. George Brown is committed definitely to having diverse panels, and I think that is
Mhm.
something that every organization should commit to, because it changes who comes in the room and it changes how they come into the room. So that's something that I didn't recognize I needed as much as the experience showed me that I did.
Yeah, no, you're so right. I mean, obviously, you were someone who, has successfully navigated your career.
Mhm.
But certainly, when it's objectively verifiable that there are people in a space that do look like you, that have
Mhm.
similar experiences, it can psychologically
Yeah,
change the way you feel, right? About
absolutely.
how you're going to be going about an interaction. It may make you feel like there's going to be less of potential stressors when you're going through the conversation. So I'm really delighted that you shared that, and I guess that you had the experience of that,
Mhm.
because many people actually go through their career saying, I've never actually experienced that, at
Yeah,
all. So
absolutely.
yeah, so pretty powerful stuff. So okay, so this question is actually a nice segue, or the last one's a nice segue based where we just left off. What advice do you have for anyone interested in pursuing a career in equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging work?
Whew, that's a big question. You could have started with that one question. I could have given five answers to the one question. So let me try and be succinct in my response. I would first say that the work is bigger than a role. It is not um, it's not a position as much as it is a personal lens and a way to see um, the world, right? And so, obviously there is a standard of practice and there's a way to do or ways to do this work, but understand that it is rooted in you, and that changes how you approach the work because it's personal, right? And so and that comes with both its power and its liabilities. I mean, that means you have to take care of yourself. That means you have to find your people, which would be my next advice, is ensure that you find people who are grounding you and supporting you, and who are able to remind you of the work that you're doing, and then lift you up and hold you up on those days where it will get hard, which brings me to my third piece of advice, which is it is it's a journey. I have a colleague at George Brown who often says to me, because sometimes I say it's a sprint and not a marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Sorry. And she's
Right.
like, no, marathons have and finish lines, right? This is ongoing. This is always moving and imagining and reimagining. And she's right. I need my goals, right? And
Mhm.
so I would say that absolutely it's really a journey. And so to be committed to that journey means that there's a part of you that has to be really in this work. Um,
Right.
there's a Gwendolyn Brooks poem that says something to the effect of, live not in the battles won, um, live not in the end of the song, but live in the along, something like
Right. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say, is that if you're coming into this work, you need to live in the along, right? You need
Yeah.
to know that it is, it's a daily, one step at a time journey. And because of that, you need to take care of yourself. You need to recognize it's personal. You need to recognize that there's a professional standard that you want to take in, but you got to take care of yourself so that you can keep on this journey. And then you have to. My last thing is what I would say is that this work often is situated around pain and depression and struggle, right?
Mm.
There's the push towards folks achieving justice and their rights, and really creating this equitable space, but you have to balance that with joy and resilience and imagination and creativity. And if you are not doing that, like, I don't think you can do this job long, because it will tear at you. So I would say anyone coming in is remember those things. It's personal and professional. It is a lifelong journey. It is you need to have your people, and understand that you got to balance the hard stuff with the joy, the creativity, and the imagination.
Wow. I know you said one last thing, but I'm kind of like, I can go on if you want to go on. I mean, everything that you said is just so powerful, and so true. And I know that you, spoke about it in the context of a journey, something that is ongoing. And, oftentimes I will say to people, sometimes you do need to just kind of take a breath, right, on a journey, and then you just need to get right back into it, right?
Absolutely.
Don't ever feel like it's something that you should be thinking has an endpoint, like you said, but sometimes you just need to kind of take a breath, get that water, get right back in, and
Yeah.
continue moving forward. So thank you for all of that.
Thank
I'm
you.
taking away some things for myself from that. And just congratulations again. They are so
Thank
lucky
you.
in this role.
I
Congrats,
appreciate
Jennifer.
it, Jason. Thank you so much.